Federal government gazettes KAMA. National Economic Council receives Finance Bill 2020. Advocacy for the amendment of Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007 intensifies as more local government areas join One Local Government, One Product initiative. The program is Business Express and it's reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Muplang Dakok. Glad to have you join us today on Business Express. The federal government has gazetted the Companies and Allied Matters Act 2020, known as KAMA. The repeal and reenactment of the Companies and Allied Matters Act 1990 as KAMA 2020 is viewed as a major game changer in the corporate regulatory landscape. The Senate Committee on Appropriation has received more 2021 budget reports from standing committees. It said cutting cost of governance will be a major point in considering the reports.
Its request, then it's left for us, based on the resources available, based on the understanding, based on the principle, based on the agenda of the National Assembly, which, of course, part of our agenda in the National is
prudent management of public finance and timely remittances to government coffers are critical to the facilitation of Nigeria's economic recovery, as experts continue to call for the amendment of Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007. The proposed amendment seeks power to block leakages in government revenue drive by ensuring government-owned enterprises remit 80% of their operating surplus to the Treasury, while retaining 20% for their operations, among other provisions.
Opportunity to appeal to the Parliament, the members, civil society, organized civil society, media. Let's breathe life into this act.
The Night Assembly now has a very interesting window to leave a good legacy. Put all the legislations that help up ramp up revenue, help up ensure accountable and prudent management of public funds.
Following Wednesday's approval by the Federal Executive Council, the 2020 finance bill that seeks to provide more tax incentives for Nigerian businesses and individuals was formally presented to the National Economic Council Thursday at a meeting presided over by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo. Minister of State for Budget and National Planning Clem Agba made the presentation of the bill, now headed to the National Assembly, at the virtual NEC meeting for the month of November 2020.
This also includes exemption of small companies from payment of education tax. Minister of State for Budget and National Planning, Clem Agba, made the presentation at the virtual NEC meeting for the month of November 2020. A committee chaired by the Vice President for NEC to engage with youths and other critical stakeholders in addressing the deeper roots of the NSAS protests was formed at the last meeting of NEC. Members of the committee are governors drawn from the 6 geopolitical zones in the country. Council, at its meeting, resolved that the planned zonal engagements should should proceed with the focus on youths and civil society organizations dealing especially with issues of jobs and employment. Similarly, the state-level interactions should proceed in places where this has not been reported. On current trend in food prices and the need for urgent remedial measures, Council received a presentation showing that the hike in prices is due to the delay in harvesting as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and SARS protests, which stalled food transportation and delivery, and banditry, as well as farmers-herders conflict. States and the federal government were urged to adopt urgent measures, including social protection schemes, to deal with the situation. The federal government is also to pursue the implementation of its Agric plan under the Economic Sustainability Plan and others to positively improve the situation in the sector. In the State House, Jide Onifade.
Now we'll take a look at issues around the finance bill and its implication for the Nigerian economy. I have with me Balogun Abdul Rashid. He is the Vice Chairman, ICANN, Abuja and District. It's a pleasure to have you today on Business Express.
Good afternoon, madam.
All right. So let's talk about some parts of the finance bill that talk about a reduction in duties for tractors from 35 to 10% and reduction in duties for motor vehicles for the transportation of goods from also 35 to 10%. What do you see happening to agriculture and the transportation sector in Nigeria based on that?
Well, thank you very much. We have to look at the fundamental background of this Finance Act. The essence of it is to promote fiscal equity, to mitigate instances of regression taxation. Now, what we mean by that is that government want to ensure equity and uniformity in payment of taxes. Now, there is high demand of expenditure on government, and the available financial resources, revenue, is not enough to sustain expanding government expenditure. Therefore, the only area government to look at it now is to reform the tax, because there has been dwindling trend in the revenue. And in the recent past, government has indulged in borrowing. And as at present, I think Nigeria debt profile has reached about 41.6 trillion. At the end of 2019, it was 27 trillion. Then, in January this year, I think government borrowed like 22.598 billion, which amount to, that is dollar, which amount to 8.7 trillion in naira. Now, recently also, the president presented another request for loan to the National Assembly, which they approved, about 5.1 trillion. Everything now rises to that. So people are clamoring that, why are we borrowing? You understand? Then, if we say the president should not borrow, the only alternative now is to look inward and bring about tax reform, because the oil is already going down, and very soon it will phase out. So, the other of reforming taxes now is to allow augmentation of existing revenue. But there will definitely be impact on the people. So how will you address the impact on people's finances? Now, that's where the issue of agriculture and other area comes. Agriculture is a critical area now. Government is exploring to improve on our export. So, to now encourage people to invest in agricultural sector, then they have to provide that incentive. And now, agricultural equipment and other associated items in agriculture have been accepted from VAT, so that it will bring about a relief to the taxpayer.
All right, let's talk about education sector. There are some exemptions also, or reduction in duties for small companies with less than 25 million turnover. How do you see this affecting education in the long run?
Yeah, you know, you have to properly categorize, segment, or differentiate this tax, because we have different types of taxes. We have company income tax. We have value added tax, VAT. Those are the two that actually affected education. We have capital gain tax, we have potential profit tax, we have stamp duties, we have levies, and a lot of other, even personal income tax. Now, if you want to talk about education, let's look at company income tax. It affects education in the sense that there is 2% tax on accessible income of all companies.
Okay.
Now, government now say that micro company, they are striving to survive in the face of economic challenges, such as COVID-19. Now, they want to accept them. That's the new Finance Act.
Okay.
Last Friday, there was a stakeholders forum.
Yes.
Chaired by Minister of Finance.
Yes.
And that's what they are going to present to the National Assembly to approve further incentive. So it will be stipulated that Education Tax Fund, which is money being contributed to education by everybody, all companies. So they are now going to accept small company profiting that. Then for VAT, first schedule of VAT Act 2004 has been amended to accommodate VAT relief, that will accept every educational fee involving the primary education, secondary and tertiary. So they are all VAT accepted now where you are paying school fees. That's how it affects education.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Somebody else is joining the conversation all the way from South Africa. We have Joachim Maesbong, a senior analyst with SBN Intelligence. He joins us via Zoom from South Africa. Hello, Mr. Joachim.
Good afternoon. I'm in Lagos, actually. Good afternoon.
All right. Afternoon. If you've been listening to us, we've been talking about the finance bill. Now, the tax relief for companies who donated to the car COVID, was announced as part of the finance bill. What do you make of this tax relief for these companies, considering the fact that these companies are big companies? Do you think Nigeria will still be able to meet her revenue targets?
Yes, so thank you for that question. First of all, we need to understand that the resources that were brought together in order to help the government to confront the issue of COVID-19 couldn't have been possible from government coffers alone. And the assistance of these companies was crucial in ensuring that government could at least put some resources in place. Of course, palliatives, medical, and other things. So these things cost a lot of money. And the resources that the COVID that the coalition brought together enabled government to confront this particularly significant challenge. Now, the tax relief they are going to get as a result will not be a lot or so much as a total of what they normally pay as tax, but it's more like a thank you from the government for assisting in the nation's time of need. And I think that it's important for companies that are able to step in such ways to be able to feel that they will receive some measure of appreciation. Again, nobody is going to get a tax holiday or anything like that. It's just a reduction here and there, again, as a thank you from the government. Now, with regard to the total government revenues, it's important for us to remember at this point that Nigeria has a revenue problem. And the revenue problem is that when you realize that the debt to revenue, the debt servicing to revenue ratio is now in the order of 90+%, you realize that Nigeria needs to generate a lot more revenues in order to meet its various obligations. But these revenues are best gotten in an atmosphere or an environment where there is a space for businesses to thrive. So if you see what the government has done here by exempting SMEs that have 25 million and below turnover from certain taxes, and also by having a reduced tax for other SMEs between 25 million and 100 million, you realize that the government wants to give space for these smaller companies to grow, and when they grow, they can begin to collect the appropriate level of tax from them. But if they don't grow because of the challenges of paying one tax or the other, then it is now going to affect the revenues, and those revenues are not going to grow. Now, we need to also understand that it is difficult to tax poverty, as it were. So it is only when there is an atmosphere of growth, where businesses are able to have the resources to, to invest in their businesses as to grow. That is when the economy will grow, and then we are going to have government revenues increase.
Right, Mr. Basebong, what do you make of the proposal for incremental changes to tax, customs, excise, fiscal, and other laws to support the 2021 budget?
Yes. So
by the way, Mr. Basebong is joining us from Lagos, not South Africa, as I initially said.
Yes, thank you. Now, about the incremental changes, you see, the world is changing very fast, and our tax laws before now had gone many years, maybe even decades, without any review. And as such, the government's commitment to an incremental review of these taxes, based on the changes that we are going to be seeing in the world due to various types of new industries coming up, various new business models, and so on. And these changes are going to also require the government to also adjust the way it makes its tax law. And I think that this commitment is very, very laudable. And I would like to see them personally. I would like to see them keep that commitment.
All right. How do you think they are going to help spur production?
Production. Now, we have already the gentleman that spoke earlier has already talked about various reductions in the cost of in the duties for vehicles for transportation, as well as tractors, in order to boost agricultural production. And also, there are various other incentives as well in the finance bill to spur productive activities. Yes.
All right. I'll come back to the studio here where we have Mr. Balogun Abdul Rashid. So, Mr. Balogun, tell us about what you feel about the proposed procurement act that is in the pipeline. What do you make of that?
Anyway, ordinarily, like the adage goes that change is always constant. So there's no law that will stay forever. There must be a review and amendment as time goes on to align with the current economic situation. So the proposal is the best for now. Although the existing law, I still believe that it has a lot of merit because it has improved on the government procurement process. So, but the reform now is to accommodate various parameters that I imagine in the procurement business. So it will address fully the issue of corruption in the procurement process. It will also promote more competitiveness, openness, efficiency, and economy if the bill is finalized.
Okay. Let's talk also about the Fiscal Responsibility Act. It has also been in the news, and there have been calls for amendment. What do you make of the issues around cost revenue from that act?
Really, you know, everything that surrounds government financial system is anchored on Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2007. So the basis of it is to ensure effectiveness, efficiency in government financial management. So the review now will also ensure that ensure timely presentation of budget by the president to National Assembly, because there's a process of budgeting.
Okay.
When president is presenting budget, he has to consider the fiscal strategy paper, which will be taken along, then the middle-term expenditure framework. So then now, since for a very long time, there has never been any time that government presented Finance Act along with budget. But this is the first time that the current administration will present. That was the one presented last year. So the essence of fiscal responsibility act is that it will define responsibility of each level of government. The one that is required by the president and executive, the one required by the National Assembly, the one required by the state government. So everybody will know the limit. You know the limit of your approval, you know the limit of your expenditure, you know the limit of your action within financial expenditure system. So Fiscal Responsibility Act is the one that governs entire management of financial process of government.
All right. We'll go back to Mr. Basebong in Lagos. Mr. Basebong, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. How do you see the act? Talking about the Fiscal Responsibility Act I was discussing with Mr. Abdul Rashid. How do you see it aligning with the monetary policies of the CBN in driving economic growth?
The issue of alignment between fiscal and monetary policy has been on the front burner now for quite some time, and these misalignments are the things that have stood between Nigeria and an accelerated economic growth. Now, these alignments, for one reason or the other, over time, have not happened because of various issues, because of maybe policy flip-flops, or maybe reforms not followed through. But now, with this particular scenario, where there is a concerted effort to align it between the Ministry of Finance and the CBN, we should definitely see a lot more movement in that area for the positive, yes.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Basebong Joachim from Lagos, for joining us via Zoom. Thank you so much for your time. And also Mr. Balogun Abdul Rashid with me here in the studio. Thank you for coming on the program today.
Thank you very much.
Moving on, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, in a new circular has clarified its position on the removal of third parties from buying of foreign exchange routed through Form M, letters of credit and other forms of payment, while reiterating its earlier directive that destination payment for all forms M, letters of credit and other forms of payment, should be made directly to the ultimate supplier of products. It gave conditions that must be met by importers if they choose to use a buying company other than the primary manufacturer. The circular from CBN states that the authorized dealers should ensure that payments are made only to the beneficiary whose name appears on the Form M, invoice, bill of exchange, letter of credit, instrument, and any other relevant document. Let's now see how the Naira is exchanging for other international currencies. We now go over to the commodity market to look at prices this Friday. Stocks continued the downward slide Friday. The NSE All-Share Index lost 1.46% to settle at 34,136.82. Market capitalization also trimmed to 17.8 trillion naira. Volume closed at 344.9 million, valued at 4.2 billion naira in 6,565 deals. The financial services sector maintained lead with Zenith Bank, UBA, FBN Holdings topping the list. And Outside the country, European stocks inched up while U.S. futures fall on virus news. Bosede Abel has an update.
European stocks traded higher in early trading of Friday, 20th November, as investors looked past spiraling coronavirus cases and a U.S. Treasury decision to spike pandemic relief programs. U.S. stock futures pointed sharply lower in the early hours of Friday as rising new coronavirus cases cast doubt on a swift economic recovery, with Dow Jones futures dropping around 190 points, while S&P 500 and Nasdaq futures edged fractionally lower. Asia-Pacific market traded mixed as investors remained cautious over the short-term economic impact of coronavirus as cases around the world continue to rise. The Nikkei fell 0.42% to 25,527.37. Shanghai Composite rose 0.44% to 3,377.73, and the Hang Seng Index also gained 0.36% in late afternoon trade. Early trading for Africa stocks were mostly bearish, but for South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40, which appreciated by 0.17%. Bosede Abel, Business Express.
With the global market report, we've come to the end of today's Business Express. Remember to keep in touch with us as you always do through your comments and observations. Be informed that this episode and all previous episodes are available on YouTube on NTA's channels. And Business Express returns again next week, Monday.